I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the most of y'all anyways for, at least understanding where I'm coming from and knowing that it is not even coming from a place of like, I hate Hysilens and I hate DOT, but genuinely listening to the potential concerns a team call may have. Hey guys, MrPokke here. I have stumbled across something that is quite interesting, and I must say, I am very heartened by like an almost 180 change of the reception in a mains subreddit regarding my opinions for whatever unit HSR is gonna be. Alright, so a little bit of a throwback, like way back in those days. I had a little bit of a similar situation with like the Jingyuan mains, like literally like on launch Jingyuan mains. So essentially what happened was that I called out Jingyuan's problems as a DPS that had way too much backloaded damage with Lightning Lord. Right, and all the crowd controls, all the fact that you need to wait for like 10 billion years and he only acts one time. I literally called it out since day one, and it's also kind of the reason why I guess I have a little bit of a reputation within the community as like the Jingyuan hater guy, right? As a Jingyuan hater, and it turns out fast forward 2 years later, those were his exact same inherent problems, and HSR fixed it by giving him a Sunday. And Jingyuan was, for like a brief moment, extremely strong in the meta, at least all the way until like the later versions of version 3, right? So back then, when I had that involvement with the Jingyuan mains, I don't think people in that subreddit like what I mentioned, which is basically I don't think Jingyuan is that strong because of all of his inherent flaws, because he's like a 2D anime unit, right? And I know that when I play HSR, I don't really care about like their lore or like their, what they look like or like their I actually just care about the meta of the game, right? How their actual performances were like all the way back then in Memory of Chaos. And I know Jingyuan is gonna be an inherent issue because the very first MOC reset, it was a buff catered to Evolution and Hunt, which gave your units an extra turn, meaning that you can stack on 10 stacks Lightning Lord every single cycle to get the maximum damage. But the moment that buff goes away, and you cannot give Jingyuan a consistent way to achieve 10 stacks Lightning Lord, and even if you could, you got all those core controls issues, which no other front-loaded DPS crit had, then it becomes a performance drop-off, which is why I didn't really like the way that Jingyuan's kit functions. Fast forward to, I believe, 2.5 years. As you guys can see, we have what looks to be a similar situation, right? This looks to be a similar situation, and no, trust me, this is not drama. I just think it's very nice that people have basically changed like how things work in HSR. So in Hysilens mains HSR, MrPokke's opinion on Hysilens and DOT. Alright, so basically I tweeted this out. I think it was probably last couple of days, where Hysilens feels very strong. DOT as a whole feels like a solid 8.5 out of 10 with an E0 baseline, but I'm concerned how DOT will shape up in version 4. If HSR go into another version 4 game like version 2 Super Break and version 3 summons, I don't know how will DOT stay competitive, and I followed this up behind with the whole archetype suffers the issue of debuffs and DOT not sticking cross waves and boss phases, which means every single time if you're up against a boss at event tree, or every time you're up against a boss like Pure Fusion, whenever you kill any of DOT, the next wave or the next phase change a boss does, you have to reapply everything again, right? So even if you can hit that 50 Arcana stacks, the moment it changes or you move on to the next target, it doesn't stick. So I mentioned what they need is an end game content that is a single wave phase mega boss, then DOT can pop off, which surprise Ligas is a 5 times HP bar, no phase change, and your DOT will stay with this guy forever. So it is what it is, right? So I basically did almost the exact same thing as I did way back in my 2.5 years ago, where I basically pointed out the issues, not just with, like in this case, Hysilens, but DOT as a whole, just like how I called out Jingyuan's potential problem, which is this backloaded damage, right? And this little upvote, I mean, it's not that crazy, just 500 upvotes, 187 comments, so it's not that great, but I just thought it was really interesting to see what the comment section are gonna be like. So before I scroll down, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys, when you first saw this screenshot, you would have been thinking to yourself, oh my god, he's done. He's done again. Here we go, right? Jingyuan 2.0, right? It's gonna be the same for again, and Mr. Dookie, Mr. jokey, bro is yapping nonsense, bro is plagiarizing CM, bro doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, all that kind of stuff. And that is probably what you expect from this subreddit mains, because technically speaking, I'm not really speaking from Hysilens in a very high place of regard, right? I'm not saying that she's a very strong unit, because of these potential issues that might come out in a couple of patches going forward in the future, especially in version 4. Because especially in HSR, the endgame environment, it changes so much, and they make bosses and debuffs cater to all the new units so much. If you're a team, right, if you're a unit that dedicates to a specific archetype, and if that archetype just falls off as a whole, it is a cause for concern, because you did just spend like 100 over pools, 160 pools if you're unlucky, to build up this one single unit or one single archetype for them to be not as relevant. And in contrast to another archetype, let's just say for example, you pull for like the vertical investment support, you pull for DPS that are a little bit less reliant on the environment compared to units like, for example, Super Break, which is very, very susceptible to your toughness locking, as well as in this case DOT, which I think they have an issue of all these things that I mentioned over here. So going down the comments, the most top voted comment, why are y'all shitting on him, is literally right. If there's
no DOT support or sub DPS in this 4.0, this archetype will forever be in limbo.
It will be limbo because DOT blah 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 game they can't be seeing this. So literally the top upvoted comment, in a huge contrast compared to, for example, Jingyuan, is they actually support your streamer. These are real flaws tied to the DOT archetype. If they keep changing phases and they keep refreshing minions, it is going to be a problem, because you basically need to always reset back up to the highest stats for Arcana, which is not an issue your auto crit DPS is going to face, because they're either going to be just doing all the damage front loaded, or all of your buffs are tied to your own supports nowadays, which is, for example, all of the zone buffs, right? Your Tribi zones, your Rame zones, and in this case, even Hysilens zones. But that being aside, this is going to be the top voter comments, blah 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 blah. So I think they're just basically breaking down how DOT as an archetype potentially is going to suffer over here, which is going to be quite interesting. And then another one, well, it's MrPokke, and that's he isn't wrong about the intrinsic problems with DOT archetype, which is losing DOT stacks each boss passive. And they started discussing a little bit more about whether or not the Divas can be generally baffling, right? They generally lost when designing the game. First thing, they are kind of changed recently, all that kind of stuff. So basically, once again, discussing the how DOT functions. And another, I don't like Pokke, but genuinely, he's right. Glad DOT is in a good place, but there is the obvious cause of concern as stated. And yeah, he even said the highest is strong. People only look at the rating. The whole DOT archetype is all these 3 characters, blah, 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 blah. We don't really have this to be relevant. Maybe in version 4, we give DOT fans another 1 or 2. Y'all, the gacha space is healing. Finally, logic is prevailing over emotions. Real talk, some of y'all really gotta move past who is saying it and focus on what is being said. For better or worse, DOT, blah, 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 blah. So this is basically in discussion to how the DOT is gonna be like, especially with the release of Kafka and Hysilens as functioning. They need a buff blast. So this is so true, by the way, right? I think if we are gonna be able to get another DOT buff that can somehow either make the buffs stick, or I think the bare minimum, which I literally explained in my earlier says, is that Black Swan skill is still 3 target, whereas Hysilens skill is already AoE, right? So I think we can start off baby steps, where Black Swan skill is also full AoE. So especially if you are going to be up against content like erudition based, for example, even this Ligers, it will be a lot easier to apply the defense onto Arcana. But I think this buff will be absolutely massive, where she makes Arcana stacks carry over, because they literally did the exact same thing for Aircron/Streams. And I don't think there's any reason why DOT couldn't get this buff over here, right? And while Hysilens will put in a good place for the time being, if we literally just get 1 DOT per version, it wouldn't fix anything, which is absolutely true, right? Because my biggest concern is, aside from all of this with DOT specifically, is that DOT has never been like a mainstream archetype. What I mean by mainstream archetype is that, for example, version 2, it's very, very clear the mainstream archetype was Super Break, right? They shielded so much for Super Break. That was the mainstream archetype. And then everything else is sort of like the less important version. Like, for example, Aircron and Facial, they were still very popular, but Super Break was like the shield archetype. Everybody was using Super Break. And nowadays in version 3, the exact same thing is happening for Caster's Tribi, which is the whole HP scaling with an abundance, self-HP sustained archetype. And going into version 4, it's probably going to be another thing, which means that throughout all these times in playing Honkai Star Rail, every single time DOT is within the same patch version, they are never going to be the mainstream archetype. So the worst thing to happen for me as somebody, like, let's just say I love DOT, right? Is they make Hysilens like a Black Swan equivalency where they release one single DOT per patch. That's it. Okay, not even per patch, per version, right? The entirety of version 3, we get Hysilens, then the entirety of version 4, we get some other DOT. So it's gonna be in a scenario where after that version update, you give them this huge power buff, which makes them compete a lot stronger with the mainstream archetypes, but they are never ever going to be able to exceed or outperform because they're always playing catch up. Because the love for DOT is just not going to be mainstream since they are not the primary focus for every single version update. Because DOT has been with us since version 1, right? Version 1 we got Kafka, version 2 we got Black Swan, then now version 3 we have Hysilens. It has always been with us, but never really. They are literally the NPC. Right, they are literally the side characters to the main protagonist, Sun Jin-woo, right? So the Sun Jin-woo for version 2 was Super Break Firefly, and then the Sun Jin-woo for version 3 is going to be Cast and Heavy Skin. So eventually when the Sun Jin-woo of version 4 comes out, I'm just a little bit concerned that if they only just keep releasing this side character buffs for DOT once a patch, it will feel a little bit bad, especially when all of these inherent problems for DOT, it will still exist going forward, right? So, yep, this is what I'm saying with clear DPS, and this is fine. Guys, clearly Emulator is going to define, okay, there it is. I have no idea what it is, by the way. Repackage DOT annihilation, blah, 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 blah. Surprisingly, measure and send a comment from me. Okay. So, yeah, just a quick little video. I kind of want to see a couple more hate comments. If I can find a couple of hate comments. No shit to OP. Oh, okay, that's it, right? No shit to OP, but I'm not gonna take the opinion of someone who just repost CN cards of content and have bandwagon on what community, even if they speak positively between Queen heel weirds. He's been notoriously like that for a while, and it got to the point where I didn't even bother looking at his content anymore because it's just not enjoyable to watch. I like to say this, right? I think this whole CN calcs and bandwagoning things, it was pretty much my content, especially at the start of the day, because I like to, translate everything on Bilibili. But I do say, if I want to be a little bit more fair to myself, over the past 1 year, I think CN content has been like one of the least of my focus, because it's pretty much just been me playing the game. Like, I think I just recently passed streaming Honkai stuff for 2,000 hours on stream. So, personally, I think I will give myself a little bit of credit for understanding the game a little bit better than average individual. But to each their own, no hard feelings, all love, peace, happiness, right? This one I'm skipping Hysilens, blah, 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 blah. Okay, no leakers, whatever goes up, blah, 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 blah. Let me try to find like a really, really hateful comment. I really, really want to try to find a hateful comment, right? Give me one. Oh, I think, is that it? Is that it? Oh, okay. Y'all listen to Pokke? He's the parent of actual TC content creators. Listen to the opinions of reputable theory crafters than some fraud who has been proven time and time again to have the worst takes. He's saying pure facts, but okay, keep the hate, right? So I just want to add this one video is that back in those days, right? Back in those days during my arc with Jing Yuanmings, this kind of comment would be those that are top voted. It will be literally the polar opposite because everybody will just say, oh, this guy talk smack about my wife or husband though, and then he's just basically not real. But fast forward to today, as of, I would say, the 6th of August, it's really, really heartening to see that the community actually can pull the hair off their ass and think with logic instead of biases. Especially in a game where I'm not a casual, right? You casual. Honkai Starbucks is going to be DHSR guy, right? So for all of these naysayers, I'm just personally quite glad that yeah, things have kind of come full circle. So Hysilens mains HSR, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the most of y'all anyways for, at least understanding where I'm coming from and knowing that it is not even coming from a place of like, I hate Hysilens and I hate DOT, but genuinely listening to the potential concerns a team call may have. So going forward in the future, you know what? We're gonna do this a little bit more often, all right? Because I think the community, at least for HSR, they have healed quite a little bit. Because literally, if this exact same thing happened back in G1 days, oh my god, he's done, bro. Like, literally, this would be, oh my god, fucking Pokke, this kanina T-bite. Like, that would be the top comment. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think it's just a it's really, really not like a war video. It's like a peaceful fulfillment of seeing how the community as a whole has grown, right? Has grown as an individual and collectively, where they know for a fact that Limbe is speaking of that, right? So let me know what you guys in the comments below. Word of the day is gonna be, I don't like Pokke. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join our Patreon for anime videos. Use code for 10% off. Give us all the best for contributions. See you guys next time.